The following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Okay, we will call to order the Planning and Zoning meeting, and we will begin with adopting our agenda. Does anyone have any suggestions, changes, or otherwise to our agenda? If not, I'd like to hear a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? Then all in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye, please.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. We can move on to our meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments or changes to the minutes from our previous meeting? If not, then a motion would be welcome.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? None. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will now move to our public hearing for our very first case. And before we do that, I'd like to mention just a few of our rules from them. We're going to have our staff member come and speak to us for a few moments about this case, and then we will hear from the applicant. At that point, once those two individuals are done speaking to us, we will then open our public hearing. If you're going to come and speak to us, if you'd be so kind as to come down that staircase, and you'll have a card you'll be giving to our clerk that'll have some information on it. And I would ask you, once you give that card to the clerk, you will then come and speak to us at the podium to your left, not the one that our staff member is standing to, but the blank one, the empty one next to her. We'd appreciate you being at that podium there. We'd like you to begin with your name, if you will, when you come to speak to us. We will then give you, we'll give you 5 minutes for your speech. There is a little timer on that podium you'll see, and at the 30 seconds to go mark, you'll go from a green light to a yellow light. And then when you run out of time, you will go to a red light. And at that point, we will ask you to wrap up, and we'll bring the next speaker on. And we enforce that time limit very strictly because it's a matter of fairness. We want to make sure everyone has the same amount of time to speak to us. I will ask you when you speak to us to please speak to the entire board, not to anyone individually. And we on the board will not go back and forth with you. We're here to listen to you. This is your time to tell us how you feel. And so we will discuss it later, but not get into an exchange with you and take up your valuable time from you. You are, as always, welcome to have a representative come and speak for a number of people if you like, or you may have individuals come down, but we kind of like to see you keep from being repetitive. So if you have maybe 5 people and 5 points, one person could come up and have 5 whole minutes to present each point. So however you want to work that out, by all means, go so. And then afterwards, if you would just return to your seat, and then we will discuss the case after that. So with that all in mind, have I forgotten anything? Doesn't appear so, so we will begin with our first case. Good evening.
Good evening. This case is for 302 South Harrison Avenue. It is a combined comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning request. In the town center area plan boundary, these two items function as a combined request. The subject property is located at the southwest corner of West Park Street and South Harrison Avenue. Notification of both the comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning requests were sent to properties shown in yellow on this map. There are no stream buffers or floodways within or around the subject property. This slide shows proposed street side trails in downtown Cary, fairly close to the subject property. And this slide shows South Harrison Avenue as an existing minor thoroughfare and West Park Street as an existing collector roadway. There are multiple C-train routes in the area. There are 4 available at the Cary Depot nearby. As per the Town Center Area Plan, the current land use designation is high-intensity mixed use. That indicates a mix of commercial, office, and medium to high-density residential uses are desired for that property. The applicant proposes to change the land use to cottage business and residential. That can be either residential or low-intensity commercial office, scaled and designed to look like residential development. The existing zoning is town center, and that town center designation will stay. With the rezoning request, the sub-district changes, and the sub-district matches the land use designation. So the current zoning sub-district is high-intensity mixed use, and the applicant proposes to change the zoning sub-district to cottage business and residential. At the Town Council public hearing in October, I believe it was October 22nd, the applicant's representative spoke in favor of the request. No one else spoke at the public hearing. Staff observations and analysis include noting that the location in downtown Cary, as well as the location in the National Register Historic District, could indicate that changing the land use and zoning to cottage business and residential, that could facilitate better compatibility with the surrounding land uses. For the comprehensive plan amendment portion, the land development ordinance cites 4 criteria to consider when determining whether or not a comprehensive plan amendment is necessary. Staff believes there could be a change in assumptions or projections. And staff does recommend approval of the comprehensive plan amendment request. And just to note, staff does not make a recommendation for a rezoning request. So tonight, when you make a recommendation following the public hearing, please do your first vote for the comprehensive plan amendment request, 15 CPA 08, and your second recommendation for the rezoning request, 15 REZ 18. And that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here this evening.
Thank you. We will now hear from the applicant.
Good evening. I'm Brandon Moore with the Site Group. I'm representing Lonnie Sroka and Joe Huddy. They're both in attendance. My office is at 1111 Oberlin Road in Raleigh. I think Meredith covered everything pretty well, and the slide she left up there is probably the best one to show what we're really looking at. We're looking at a block of CBNR and isolated HMXD parcel on that block. Our clients want to develop this property themselves. They're not HMXD high-intensity use developers, and the CBNR would be more appropriate for them to develop, and it seems to match what's on the block. There are site constraints that lend themselves to CBNR as well. Topographical change, 18 foot from the front of the site to the back. The lot is fairly narrow with limited frontage on Harrison. It doesn't really lend itself to a standalone development of high intensity on that corner. And we're really here tonight to answer your questions and just to voice our support of the proposal. So I will be here. We have the applicants and my partner, civil engineers, here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this rezoning or this comprehensive plan amendment case? I see no one moving towards the podium, so I'm going to end the public hearing, and we may now ask questions of the applicant and of the staff.
I have a question for staff. Are there any historical considerations for the existing structure on site?
Yes. This property is located in the National Register Historic District. This slide shows the boundary of the district. So it is right in this location. And this is a picture of the existing structure. So this is considered a contributing structure to the National Register Historic District.
Has the applicant expressed any willingness or desire to move the building, or is it their plan to demolish it to build the new structures?
At the neighborhood meeting, that question was asked by some of the residents nearby, and the applicant had said at that time that no decision had been made, and I'm sure that we could have Mr. Moore come back and answer that.
Sure, if you have any different answers.
No decision has been made on relocating the existing structure. There are asbestos issues. There are issues with the usability of the house. It's hard to market or justify the improvement of it. One of the owners of the property is an architect and does have high appreciation for historic structures. Both clients have a high appreciation for historic structures. I think they're looking for an option, but nothing's been found that I know of at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, would anyone care to make a motion one way or the other?
I will. I move that the board forward case number 15 CPA 08 to Town Council with a recommendation for approval to amend the land use plan as proposed. Sorry.
Perfect.
Thanks. Now we have a motion to approve the CPA amendment. We'll take the rezoning second. Is there a second? Any discussion?
I think it's just, it's a good use for the property, and changing the zoning to CP, or the amendment is kind of a no-brainer.
Okay.
I know there was some desire to have that current structure moved or to stay there because it is part of the historic district, but the original zoning and land use would have precluded that also, you know, high-intensity mixed or whatever it was. I mean, they're not going to keep the house under those circumstances. And, you know, the cottage designation is a little odd because I read, you know, in the neighborhood minutes, it sounds like they're going to put in 3 or 4 homes that are 2,500 square feet, which is not my definition of a cottage. But, you know, at any rate, it seems to be what the neighbors want. It fits in with what is already there. You know, I'm fine with it.
Any other comments or discussion on this motion? If not, I will then call it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the comprehensive plan amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone saying no? That motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion on the rezoning?
I move that the board forward case number 15 REZ 18 to Town Council with a recommendation for approval as it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans and is reasonable and in the public interest for the reasons set forth in the staff report and presentation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Any discussion? Mr. McFarland.
I think it fits well within that community, and I can appreciate moving from the HMXD to the CBNR, consistent on that block. So, concur.
I agree. I think that it's a win-win.
Any other comments?
Just to add to that, I agree. I do think I'm going to be in support of this. I do think it's going to be a good addition, and I really am interested in seeing what the final product is going to look like. I do have some concerns regarding the historical structure, but, you know, given the feedback that the applicant's given, you know, I definitely understand you can only do so much. So, you know, I'm willing to kind of give in there.
Anything else? Well, then if not, we'll call this to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please say no. Motion carries unanimously once again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes all of our cases with a public hearing. We'll now move on to our cases that have no public hearing, and once again, we will hear from the staff and we'll hear from the applicants, but we will not have opportunity for citizens to speak at this point. So our first one is 15 REZ 17. Good evening, Ms. Graham.
Thank you. Good evening. This is a request to rezone 2 parcels located on Ridgeback Road on approximately 18.2 acres. Subject property, excuse me. It's the season for colds. That would be all right if we could do the other case first.
That'll be fine with me. Anyone? I think we're all okay with that. This is a case we'll be doing 15 REZ 22. Ms. Spearman, hello.
Good evening. This is a request to rezone about 71 acres on Hollybrook Drive and other streets within the Hollybrook subdivision. This is a vicinity map. You can see Kildare Farm Road as the bordering road to the east, and Stevenson Road is the border for a small portion on the west side. This property was annexed into the town of Cary by action of the North Carolina legislature. It was effective on June 30th, so this case is a little different from many that you've seen. The annexation was initiated by some of the property owners in the subdivision in order to have utilities extended to the property. Currently, since it has been annexed, currently there is no zoning on the property. So the applicant in this case is the town of Cary for the purpose of facilitating the process so that we can move to get the property zoned as quickly as possible. The homeowners and the Homeowners Association provided input through a series of meetings regarding the specific zoning districts that are requested. As I indicated, currently there is no zoning on the property. Prior to annexation, it was R30 in Wake County. The proposed zoning districts include several different districts, R8, R20, R40, and the dark green is resource recreation. The subdivision was developed as a cluster subdivision in Wake County with community water and sewer, and the proposed districts reflect the existing uses and lot sizes within most of the subdivision, with the exception of a 12.3 acre parcel along the west portion, which was a parcel that's currently owned by the sewer authority that has the potential to be redeveloped at some point. The land use plan calls for a combination of low-density residential, medium-density residential for some of the large or the smaller residential lots, and then a portion of the property that, for the most part, coincides with areas within stream buffers that shows as parks and open space. Here you can see where stream buffers go through the property according to our GIS maps. It shows a transportation plan. Kildare Farm Road is designated as a major thoroughfare. Stevenson Road is a minor thoroughfare, and then Hollybrook Drive that extends through the property is designated as a collector. There were several concerns expressed at the public hearing and subsequent to the public hearing, mostly regarding the R8 proposed zoning district for the undeveloped 12-acre parcel that I mentioned. At the public hearing, one speaker expressed concern with density and traffic impacts, and I would also like to point out here there is a mistake in your staff report where it states that there were no speakers, citizen speakers at the public hearing, so that is an error. There was one speaker. Also, at the public hearing, a council member noted that R20 may be a more appropriate transition for the adjacent neighborhoods. And also, you received via email a petition signed by 78 residents of the adjacent subdivision to the north, which is Kildare Estates. And again, there were concerns expressed there regarding the proposed R8 zoning of that one lot and the potential traffic impacts that could be generated by that. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for questions, as is Steve Shankin, who is a representative of the Hollybrook Homeowners Association, who is here this evening as well, if you have any specific questions related to the proposed districts that are requested. I would also point out this is not a conditional use zoning case. It is, so there's no opportunity for the applicant to offer any additional conditions to address concerns. It is just a general use case. And also, with it being a general use case, you do have the option to recommend the district as proposed in the staff report, which is the R8, or you could recommend approval of a more restrictive district, which in this case could include for residential use either R20 or R40, just as your options. So that concludes staff's comments, and I'll be available as Mr. Shankin for any questions.
Does anyone, excuse me, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the lots on, I think it's maybe slide 52. Or is that what you're on now? Sorry, I'm switching back and forth between what you're showing and the printout. The lots to the west, are all of those developed, and what is their zoning? What's the approximate size of those lots?
All of the surrounding area is in Wake County zoned R30. The minimum lot size in those areas is 30,000 square feet, which is about 0.7 acres. These lots, where you have these lots at the end of the cul-de-sac with the pie shape, are a little bit larger. These are, some of these go up to 0.8, 0.9 acres.
And they're
a little
developed.
bit closer to an acre.
They're developed.
But they are,
there are homes
yes,
there.
they're
Okay.
Existing residential lots. And then this area to the north is the Kildare Estate subdivision that the petition was submitted regarding.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, by all means.
The Hollybrook Drive, Stevenson Road, future connection, I think you alluded to earlier. Do we have any timeline of when that's going to come in?
I don't know of Hollybrook Drive currently ends here. There's I'm not aware of any specific plans for extension of that. There is a small parcel that doesn't really show as a public right-of-way, but there is a small strip in between these.
Can you go to slide
two
56,
lots.
please? I just wanted to confirm that. It looks like that there's a proposed collector road
Right.
that connects there.
If that were to be if those lots were to be redeveloped, then
okay.
that would be extended.
Okay. I understand. Thanks.
Just to follow up on that, if I may, isn't there a home at the end of that cul-de-sac? So I don't think this could be extended.
Well, again, it would be a matter of if the subdivision were redeveloped, because there are two residential lots. At the end of that, it would require redevelopment of those lots.
And so it would appear, if the only other person to speak here is a representative of the Homeowners Association, there is no builder that is currently interested in developing this tract of land?
Not to my knowledge. Okay. But that would be a question for Mr. Mr. Schenken to address. My understanding is that they're, with the annexation and the requirement basically to apply some zoning to it, trying to get established so in the future if the property is to be developed, it's that could be done as closely to what is likely to occur as possible.
I just want to make sure I understand this. I'm looking, at the package, and I'm looking at the proposed zoning, and there's actually nothing in that open area, but that was requested to be R8, right? That's what I remember from
that area is requested to be R8. Currently, there's not a proposal to develop that area, but it is necessary for zoning to be applied to it as quickly as possible, simply because at this point there's no zoning applicable to any of these properties. So as residents would come in to make expansions of their lot and look into setbacks and those sorts of things, we don't have any zoning there now. Most of the area is pretty straightforward in looking at a zoning district because it's coming up with the Cary district that most closely matches the development that has occurred. And the one larger parcel that would no longer be needed for the sewer provisions for the subdivision is one that could be redeveloped at some point, although there aren't specific plans to my knowledge to do that at this point.
But if this passes, they would be able to develop to R8 zoning standards.
According to this, the proposed district, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Mary, if I understood what you said before, is that that the unzoned lot that we're speaking of, that designation of R8 was one given by the staff, because the staff had to basically, as this area is annexed, the staff, there was a need to make sure it all conformed to the Cary.
There is a need to make sure that there is a district on all of the properties. And as I mentioned, most of the properties that are currently developed or ones that the homeowners association indicated would not be, that there was no interest in developing more intensely, have designations that match that. In terms of the specific designation of R8 for this area, that was the specific zoning classifications were developed in concert with the homeowners association according to their request with how they would like to see the property rezoned. The town is listed as the applicant and is bringing it forward more from an expediency standpoint, so that since it has been annexed already, and so we just want to make sure that it's moving forward and that zoning districts are applied to the property.
Okay, so follow up on that then, if I understand what you said, that the R8 designation was basically at the suggestion or recommendation of the request of the HOA?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Any other?
yeah, one more. So we can make the recommendation to change that from R8 to R20? If
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions
I've got a couple of questions for the homeowner.
for the HOA?
Yeah.
Yes, we can bring the HOA president or the HOA representative up.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Steve Shank, and I'm the treasurer of the HOA, and resident of the neighborhood.
Good evening. Two questions. The first is this basically just a drainage field, this particular R8 parcel, just a drainage field for the septic system?
So it's kind of a complicated story, so I'll give you the very brief answer. It was essentially our septic lot. We had a community sewer system that failed. And so it is basically undeveloped area. It's relatively flat. It's got a gentle slope to it. Down by where the water buffer is, where the stream buffer is, it's a more aggressive slope to it in that area. But it's not required as drainage for any system in there right now. When Hurricane Fran came through, it wrecked our community sewer system. And then we were essentially rescued by the town of Cary with running the sewer system through it. And so it's an abandoned septic field at this point.
So are you on Cary sewer and water now? Or?
We have been on Cary sewer. And we have been on Cary water for part of the neighborhood. Part of the neighborhood has been on Aqua water. There is a big history of a lot of struggle for our neighborhood with the utilities. And essentially, the people in the front half of the neighborhood pay triple water rates as a result of the issue. And so a modest house will have a $130 water bill every month.
The other question I wanted to ask is the issue of traffic going up Brook Cross Drive, the potential additional traffic if this was developed. There are two exits to your development already, Hollybrook Drive and Perney Court.
Correct.
I'm pronouncing that correct.
Correct.
It would seem to me that either one of those would be more easily used as an exit than to venture around Brook Cross Drive. Is that kind of a reasonable conclusion to draw from the way this neighborhood is configured?
I think it's a reasonable conclusion. I think part of it, as a resident, part of it depends on which way you intend to go when you get to Kildare Farm Road. If you're going to head south, you would almost certainly head out on Perney Court. If you were headed north, I'm not really sure which way would be the fastest and easiest way to go. You probably have a little bit of a straighter shot and a little bit easier time getting out on Hollybrook Drive. People who live over in that area, I don't think generally go out Brook Cross. I live in the back part of the neighborhood. I never go in and out of Brook Cross.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Could I clarify the couple things that you were discussing before about the planned access through the two houses at the end? So that was initially emergency access route for emergency vehicles. There's no plan for a road. There's no plan to redevelop. There are houses right there, and that strip of land that is not owned by those homeowners is about 12 feet wide. So there is never any plan to have a road connecting to Stevenson in there. The plan is to, at some point, develop that 12-acre lot with homes that fit within the same feel, at least of what the front part of the neighborhood is. So we have about 80% of the houses are on relatively small lots, about 0.2 of an acre. And then in the very, very back part of the neighborhood, there's about 20%, 17 houses that are on bigger lots. So the intent of the whole purpose of this whole project is to basically make the houses that would go into that land fit with the rest of the neighborhood and essentially be assimilated into the Hollybrook subdivision. The HOA, and there's also an entity called the Hollybrook Sewer Association, which is an LLC. We need to develop that land. We need to sell it in order to pay for the annexation and the installation of the utilities to get the homeowners in the front part of the neighborhood out of this burden of this $130 a month for the rest of their lives. Water bills and resale values are very low. Turnover is relatively high. And it's just, it's been a tough spot for those residents since Fran, so, the early 90s. So the intent is to sell it. There are 3 developers who have expressed an interest. There is nobody who we've accepted an offer from or even pursued it because we wanted, as an HOA, to be responsible with how we go through the whole process and essentially get all of our things done that needed to be done before we could really go and begin to offer the land. So that is what the plan is.
Do you feel the developers would still be interested if this was R20 rather than R8?
It would certainly change how they would look at it. And the thing about how the land is laid out and the way that it looks, there have been people who have looked at it over the last 15 years or so, and there's been a number of times when people have expressed interest in buying it and developing it, and they were never able to do so because there were never utilities there. So once we started having these discussions and once we got annexed, which we were the drivers of the annexation, by the way, a lot of interest started to happen. So the plans so far, only one entity has drawn up plans. They drew them a while ago. It has about 28 houses on it. It's not all buildable land. It's not all graded properly, and it's not just suitable to pack a whole bunch of houses in. The HOA does not wish to have, the homeowners, the LLC, the HOA does not wish to have 50 houses or whatever it could be fit in there if it was done as densely as possible. We want to have it fit with the rest of the neighborhood. And so the initial plans that we've seen in the conversations, there's 3 developers who have come forward and said, hey, well, we'd love to do it. And we have said, when we sell it, we will basically say you will do it in a manner that fits in with what the rest of the neighborhood is. And, 28, 24, 30 houses possibly in there. So, there's a one access point in and out of there. So, it's not feasible to pack it in too terribly densely because the roads in the neighborhood are all pretty tight. You've got 2 cars fit, and that's about it. And that's how Hollybrook is. That's how the front part. That's how the whole neighborhood is. So.
Thank you.
So if I just follow up on Ms. Jenkins, the HOA was requested for the R8 designation, and I guess from what you said that you felt so that would make it as the most marketable piece of land at that designation, or is that an unfair statement?
I would say that's a fair statement. It would give us the most flexibility with how we go forward with having it built on and have it developed.
Okay. Thank you.
My concern is that if it's R20, with how the land is laid out, we won't be able to get enough houses in there to make the whole rest of the project and the utilities all come together and work.
If I can make one addition to my previous comments that I missed earlier, another option to be another optional district that you could consider would be R12 as well. I don't know if that would make any difference, but that's at least a step in between the R8 and R20 that's more restrictive than the current zoning that would be an option.
Are there any other questions for our applicant or for our staff?
Since you brought it up, the R12, what are the lot size differences between an R8 and an R12?
R8 is 8,000 square feet, R12 is 12,000.
If there's no other questions, I have one, and it may seem like it's totally immaterial. Do you intend, if this property were to be sold, the large lot, and it were to be developed, is it your HOA's intent to seek annexation of that developed property into your HOA?
So, good question, not a very easy answer. Yes, we would like to have those residents be members of our HOA. It depends on what a developer is willing to do and what we can negotiate that is in the best interest of the neighborhood. So ideally, for instance, what we would like is we have a very, very small pool, and clearly we have a pretty substantial amount of land in our neighborhood that is reserved for recreation and is green space. And so, for instance, up in the front right on Kildare Farm, that is a big open sports field, which is great. And so part of what we'd like to do is essentially go to a developer and say, hey, we would like to have your residents be part of our HOA, maybe build us a nicer, bigger pool so that we can accommodate your people who are going to buy your houses and, essentially improve the value of the whole neighborhood through some means like that. So our intent and our wish is to have those residents be part of the HOA. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it is what we would like to have happen. It would also be in the spirit of building the community. Certainly. And developing it further.
And Ms. Bierman, the green area, the R&R, that's off limits for good? That's owned by the HOA? That can't be developed, the resource recreational property?
It could not be subdivided or developed for residential. It could be available for certain recreation type uses, but no, it could not be developed.
Are there any other questions? Now, typically, we put a motion on the table and we talk about it here and there, but if anyone is thinking about subdividing this or suggesting a different zoning than is put forward, this would probably be a good time to discuss that. It might help someone else frame a motion, perhaps, even.
Yeah, to me, R8 is just not working in this area. There's just no transition between, R8 to what's surrounding in the area. And I look at this whole map, obviously R20 is marketable. The entire area seems to be full of it. I understand, topographical issues, but everybody faces those. So I don't know if R20 is the correct thing, but I feel positive that R8 is not. So I don't know where you want to go with that.
So I think the way our operations, our rules would work is, I suppose, because we don't have a time limit on the applicant, we would ask you something.
Sure.
As opposed to just volunteering something to us. I think that would be, is that the appropriate way to, I mean, I don't want to stifle you in any way, but if there's something you want to add to this, by all means, I'm all ears.
So, ma'am, to your comment, the whole front of the neighborhood is R8. And so we've got 86 houses in the neighborhood, and 69 of them are on small lots and are essentially R8. And so it really does fit in with what Hollybrook is and with what our neighborhood is. And it would certainly be our intent when we sell the land eventually to a developer to essentially say, keep it in the spirit or better of what the neighborhood is.
Right, but I have to look out for the surrounding neighborhoods.
Certainly.
And that's what I'm looking at. So you've got, established homes here who are large lot, and if you put R8 houses, and I don't know what the topography looks like, but say it were right up against them, you could have, 3 homes smashed up against one, which just, and, with residential areas, there's not much of a buffer required.
Sure.
And you've got issues, with space, so my guess is there wouldn't be much of a buffer. So I really just think R8 is, my personal opinion is it's not appropriate.
And to follow up, if I
go
can,
ahead.
with Carlos.
Sure.
For me, it comes down to the land use plan designation, which is LDR. And I just don't think the R8 works in an LDR setting. Like, I just think it's too crowded. I understand we allow for it, but I just think that it's too crowded. I don't think that was really the intent from a land use plan perspective. So I want to kind of second what Carl is saying over here. I'm on board with that. I'd want something, bigger lots. I'd expect to see that in an LDR. That's where I am.
Mr. Spearman, can I ask you, this could be like the dumbest question I've ever asked here, but looking around at R30 Wake County, are these ETJ properties? Are they annexed into the town of Cary, the surrounding areas? They're carrying a Wake County zoning, so.
They're properties in Wake County. They're not an area TJ.
Okay. And this area asked to be annexed for services, and this all falls.
That's correct. Just as a short explanation, normally when areas come in, if the entire subdivision, an entire subdivision could petition the town to be annexed. And when that occurs, we apply the zoning, and the annexation occurs together so that we don't annex without applying zoning. If the town doesn't have the ability to consider an annexation request if anything short of the entire subdivision makes the petition. And so this was a case where not everyone in the subdivision was petitioning to annex, so that it was taken to the legislature. So that was why it was annexed by the legislature, but when that occurred, the zoning component doesn't go with it. So we're picking up that piece.
Yes, sir.
Let me follow up on this sewer situation, because I was in a neighborhood that was annexed into the town of Cary. We were all on well and septic systems. We weren't on a private septic system for an entire development. But I used to live in one up in North Cary, and their septic field got taken down by the hurricane as well, because it was planted in an area with a lot of trees. The trees tore up the septic field, and it had to be rebuilt to the cost of the individual homeowner. I'm hearing you say that Cary came in and offered to build a sewer system once your system was non-functional. First of all, is that correct?
So, yes, it's correct. And basically what happened is when it failed, they came in and they ran the sewer lines through, put in a couple of sewer pumping stations. And so some of those lots in there are actually pumping stations that are in the neighborhood.
Okay.
So.
Now, who paid the development fee to connect to the sewer system? Did each individual homeowner?
Okay, so it gets a little more complicated again, because basically what happened is on the map that you're looking at, the lots that are R20 are all individual septic lots. All of the rest of the lots in the neighborhood were all on the community sewer system. So essentially, those homeowners paid about $8,000 to $10,000 apiece to sign on for it, and so then since then they've been paying the triple water rate as their monthly bill to handle the sewer. They all still have septic tanks in their yards, and so it's the homeowners foot the bill for it, and they've continued footing the bill in the triple sewer rates for 25 years now. So, you know, the homeowners were the ones who initiated the annexation. The homeowners basically went to the state and said, hey, the best way to get this done is through this legislative annexation, which is apparently a ridiculously rare thing to have done. But when we did our petition, and we had 87% of the homeowners sign on and say we wanted to be annexed. The handful who did not were in the R20 section, which is, you know, they have their own septic systems anyway. So it's all tangled in. It's all a very complex thing with, and so furthermore, the homeowners association and the homeowners are on the hook to pay Cary a pretty substantial amount of money for the tie-in. Cary is paying a pretty substantial amount as well, so we're partners on it.
Well, that's kind of the direction of my question, because when just for the board's benefit here, when our neighborhood got annexed, Cary was willing to pay about a $350,000 to maybe $400,000 cost of the sewer and water improvements. But again, Cary wanted us in. Unlike your situation where you had a failed system, you people were in more of a need than the town was. The town was probably very gracious in terms of at least addressing your need.
Yes.
You know, personally, when I drove around this development this afternoon and was thinking about this issue of, okay, should R20 extend up into this little utility lot, or is it natural for R8 to be in there because that's the neighborhood? And when I looked at Google Earth on my little iPad to look at these streets, I could hardly find a house because there were so many trees. So when I went out to the site, there were a lot of trees.
Yes, sir.
And I really don't think, based upon what I saw as the character of the homes in the subdivision to the north and the subdivision to the east, and I don't think that's part of the same subdivision on Stevenson Road. These are pretty large lots. They're treed lots. I don't think R8 is going to degrade the feeling of some of these estate lots to the north or to the west. And some of these other lots on the other side of Kildare Farm are not what I would identify as estate lots at all, even though they look large. So my feeling is this is a homeowners association that needs some help, and I think giving the flexibility of R8 in an existing neighborhood that is already R8 is not pushing the envelope at all. So that's the direction I'm leaning in.
Okay. If I can just make an assumption here, I'm not hearing anything about anyone on the board having any real problem with the existing homes, the existing properties, and the zoning they have. We're all mostly concerned with this undeveloped area. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to, if that helps, move the discussion
Yeah, so
forward.
Lisa, you know,
Right.
I guess, you know, and I appreciate your insight on, you know, from the annexation, and I appreciate what the homeowner association is. I keep looking at that site, and I've driven through there, and part of the issue is I visualize if it was R8, and looking at the roads, and, you know, as Mr. Jenkins said, I mean, they're relatively small collector roads, and I'm just trying to envision, you know, what that will be, because it's already has limited access, and looking at the amount of traffic and just thinking about that, you know, what that would fit. And I appreciate staff's recommendation that, you know, R12 is an option, R20 somewhere within there there'll be a large natural buffer. I mean, in many ways, there's a lot of geography that's going to separate what will eventually, in this lot that we're talking about. So it won't be necessarily contiguous in a sense to the existing R8. There's a fairly large, that R&R will be a fairly large buffer, so it'll be almost like an entity into itself. And so I wrestle with, you know, the R8 there versus thinking that its neighbors are going to be much closer to the R20 or the R30 that's you know, the estate lots that you mentioned. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm wrestling with R8 doesn't feel like it's a good fit. R12 could. The lots at the 50% increase in the lot size, maybe helping the HOA get what they need, et cetera. That's kind of where I'm.
Yeah, I could live with R12.
I think that's where I'm leaning to, is I think R8 is too small, R20's too big. So I think R12 is kind of a happy medium, and, you know, maybe I think with what Mr. Rogers said, I think it's the HOA is in need of some little assistance here, and I think that we're in a position to assist. And so I'm leaning towards R12 is kind of good for me.
So we're hearing 12s and 20s, and anyone else have an opinion, number-wise?
I'm just
Not
a little bit
necessarily.
confused. I mean, we are able to say that we would recommend something different, because I thought you said at the beginning because it wasn't conditional use. This wouldn't be a condition.
It wouldn't be a condition because it's a general use district, you do have some flexibility to recommend something that's a lower intensity use than what's before you.
Anyone else have something they'd like to say before we put any motions on the floor?
I'm not stuck on R20.
Well, no one said the number I'm thinking of yet, so let me muddy it up even more. First of all, excuse me, thank you for coming out. I really appreciate this. I've been an HOA president, and it's a tough job to do, especially when you're doing things like this. And you did a great job making your case. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm hung up on the fact that it is a general zoning. And I don't mean to sound pedantic here, but how this usually works is a developer gets their eye on a piece of property, they talk to the owners, and then they say, okay, we're going to go ahead and put a rezoning request through, and they come and talk to us. Now, the people in the neighborhood and everyone else who have different opinions talk to the developer, and the developer starts to say, well, let's horse trade back and forth, let's negotiate. And they walk in here with zoning conditions that might say, oh, even though it's R8, we're going to limit it to 2 dwelling units per acre, or we're going to have this or that on here. If we go straight to R8, and I understand why we would want to do that, it makes it easier for someone to walk in and just build at R8 without offering up any zoning conditions, which is, in our experience, kind of rare. Typically, they come in and they say, well, we'd like to do R8, but in order to make that more palatable and have less people filing in here complaining about it, we'll offer this condition or that condition. So I can see we're just putting a blanket R8 here right now sort of jumps that step. Typically, and this is where I'm leaning, when we put a placeholder zoning in, we go R40. And we just say, it's an R40, it's a holding zoning. When someone finally has designs on this property, they will come back and see us with a rezoning with conditions. In my limited opinion, that doesn't hurt the ability to sell or market this property, because that's how most developers have to deal with this anyway. So if this property was sitting here with an R40 on it, or an R20, it's, in my opinion, only a little bit less attractive than if it was sitting with an R8. I've been down this road in an HOA, and the reason I asked about annexing them, as an HOA, you've got very few arrows in your quiver. We have a lot of amenities. We'll bring you in. You can raise the sale price of your homes. And that allows us to get what we want. Maybe you build a little lesser density or whatever. But short of that, you don't have a heck of a lot of reason to make somebody want to do something. Once you sell it to them, they can do it. They got the zoning. So coming here is sort of your second chance to get what you're looking for. And I just get the feeling that if we go R8 here, we take that one step of citizen involvement out of the process. No one ever has to come and present and talk about conditions in a rezoning and air this out one more time. And that seems to be, to me, quite different than how things are typically done. So I'm certainly not in the R8 camp. I would be much more inclined to go with something that we would be considering a holding pattern zoning, and then let somebody come to us when the time comes that they actually want to develop this, and they have a much clearer idea of what they want to do. And that's just my opinion. And I have a feeling I'm in the minority on this board here at this point, so I just thought I'd air that out.
Can I make one
Absolutely.
point? Just a clarification point. I think you hear us refer to, talk about zoning conditions a lot. And just to be clear, any conditional use zoning is always voluntary on the part of the applicant. So the ability, even with the R40 rezoning, the applicant does have the right to come in with another district that's not conditional use.
They certainly
just to make sure that's clear.
So here's my thought. I think we have some support for R12. If we did R12, it couldn't be any smaller than that. They couldn't come in with conditions unless they came in for a rezoning, right?
Right.
And I don't really see anything bigger happening in this area simply because of the financial restrictions, and which is certainly not my area, so I shouldn't have even said that. I'm just, I'm looking at the map, thinking about the people that live around it. So I would make a motion, if you're ready for one, and we can just see if it flies.
Sure, I believe you are.
I'm good at doing that, just see if it flies, right?
See what happens.
Okay, so I move that the board forward case number 15 REZ 22 to Town Council with a recommendation for approval with the exception of the undeveloped area. And in that case, I want to change R8 to, I would recommend that that be R12 zoning, general zoning. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans and is reasonable and in the public interest for the reasons set forth in the staff report and presentation. It's kind of muddled, but you get the gist, right?
I will second.
Discussion, please. Do we have that motion captured?
Right.
Correct.
So I'm just speaking of the area that is not developed, that was recommended as R8. We would recommend it be R12. And like I say, I don't really see anything bigger going in there, but at least there's a minimum of 12,000 square lot. And when they do get serious about drawing out site plans, if that just absolutely won't work, then they can come back and ask for something and have more specifics.
And I think I think R12, I'm very comfortable with R12 for that reason.
Any other discussion on this motion?
Well, I'd like to stick with R8, and the reason that I'd like to stick with R8 is this is a homeowners association that needs some help. They've already been hurt by a hurricane event that was totally out of their control, and now they've got a financial burden with a number of homeowners in the development. And we're kind of sitting here and we're looking at a nice little chart that tells us that, oh, these lots look like they ought to be big because everything else around it looks kind of big. And I admit, I like tidiness myself, and I'd end up saying that that might be a reasonable transition. But this is already R8. Admittedly, down in this lower section, southwest corner, it's R20. Homeowners Association has already indicated there's not going to be a lot of lots built on this particular piece of ground due to the topography, as I understand it. So I just don't feel we ought to pile on these people any further than what they've already had done to them already. I'm not going to vote for this.
And I guess we should point out R8 is minimum 8,000. I mean, there's certainly areas with very large lots that are R8. Any other discussion on this?
I appreciate the points being made by everybody on the board. I guess I'm leaning towards the R12. I haven't looked at it close enough to really understand the topography and to see what would actually happen on there. And at R12, so we can come back and say, here's what the lay of the land really looks like from a developer perspective, and then we can, if they want to rezone it, they could at that point. But I think an R12 gives it a good point, kind of a medium for everybody, marketability, and then we'll, see what happens when we come back. And I think it, I do, not looking for, I do think it makes for a transition as I look at this from a overall land piece. I think it's a transition from to the west and the south, potentially the starting point.
Any other discussion on this?
I guess I'll pipe in. I agree with I'm on board with the R12 as well. I second the transition. I think it does make a good transition, but I also think it is a pretty good compromise. I mean, you have an R20, you have an R8. We're kind of splitting the difference there with the R12. I mean, I know that's looking at a very high level, but, you kind of are getting something there in the middle. So
the only thing I'll add is I still echo your alignment with the land use plan in the first place. And we talked about that just a few meetings ago about when you go to LDR about what becomes appropriate and not. So is there any further discussion on this motion? And let's restate it just to make sure we're all right. Just about the unincorporated or the unbuilt part is R12. That's what we're going at, right? You don't have to.
This is a test.
R12 is what we're talking about for the
Yes, for the area that is
area.
undeveloped.
Yeah.
That was recommended for R8. We're saying that we think R12 is more appropriate, and the rest is okay.
All right. If there is no discussion, then we'll call this to a vote and see where we go. All in favor of the motion, please say aye and raise your hand if you will.
Aye.
Aye.
We have four. Was that? Aye. Okay, we have four. And all opposed? No and no. So it passes 4-2 at R12. And again, I thank you very much. That's
thank you for your time and
hard job to
attention.
do.
I really appreciate it. My pleasure.
Thank you. Whichever one you want to do next.
Thank you. Let's see if we can get through this time. Sorry about that. This is a request for rezoning for 18.2 acres, shown here highlighted in yellow, south of Ridgeback Road. Subject property is developed with 2 detached residential homes, and portions of it are wooded. The existing zoning is Wake County, R40. The proposed zoning is residential 40 conditional use. Conditions proposed by the applicant would limit the use to detached residential and neighborhood recreation. Land use plan designation is very low density conservation residential. The site is impacted by a stream buffer according to Cary's most recent GIS maps, and field determination would be required at the time of development plan review. This shows you the location of proposed future greenway trails in the vicinity of the subject property, and then the existing American Tobacco Trail in close proximity to the site to the west. Green Level West Road is a major thoroughfare, and Ridgeback Road is shown on Cary's comprehensive transportation plan as a future collector road. So road improvements would be required along the property frontage to meet the property owner's half of the responsibility for road improvements along that future collector. This shows you the notification of property owners within 800 feet of the subject property. There were no speakers at the public hearing. When we prepared this slide, it notes that there was one nearby property owner who expressed concerns about maintenance on Ridgeback Road. Since then, we have heard from a second property owner who's expressed some concerns. And I wanted to take just a moment to show you what else is occurring in the vicinity. The area in yellow shows the subject property south of Ridgeback Road. There's an adjacent 3 parcels of land where the Autumnwood development plan is in review currently. And this shows you a zoomed-in view of the Autumnwood proposed development, which is going to have access to Green Level West Road and would have access points to this subject property. Just backing up a little bit, just so that you can see, well, it is a concern, and the property owner can speak to this as well, because Ridgeback Road is a private road. And right now, there's no public right-of-way from this site to the subject property. Access to public right-of-way would be required before any lots could be subdivided in the subject property. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear. So this concludes.
Expand on that, please?
Pardon?
Could you expand on that?
You can't subdivide lots unless you have access to a public road by way of public right-of-way. So they would not be able to come in and develop this property highlighted here until there was a road network that connected to public right-of-way.
But you stated that there would be with this potential development.
Eventually,
to the
right.
southeast.
Right, so they could get it rezoned, but they can't start developing and building houses there until they have access to a public road.
Right. Now, as to Ridgeback Road, that can remain private between this particular lot and White Oak Church or White Oak.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
The applicant is present, and following their comments, I'll be available for any questions you have.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joel Mallon. I represent the applicant. I'm a project manager with McKimmon Creek. Just to make this clear, these two parcels are really phase 2 of Autumnwood. We intend to extend those roads through. Primary access will be to Green Level West Road, not down Ridgeback Road. But in response to the neighborhood meeting that brought up comments about the maintenance of Ridgeback Road, and also additional comments that have been raised recently about construction traffic that might occur on Ridgeback, the developer has created a maintenance agreement, road agreement for this project to limit construction traffic, or to really to limit construction traffic on Ridgeback Road. Plus, they will maintain the gravel portions of Ridgeback Road. My friend Prantham is here this evening, so he and I, or the applicant, have worked out an arrangement how we will pave a portion, our half of Ridgeback Road for the length of the development. So there will be a 22-foot wide with curb and gutter and sidewalk for the length of the roadway of Ridgeback Road. I think if you discuss with the neighbors out there, they're going to be delighted with the idea that this gravel road that we've all driven on for 30 years is now going to be paved. So I think. But the ones that we have talked to, this maintenance agreement has seemed to satisfy their concern for this. But the lots that would be developed, as Deborah said, they are conditional use, single-family detached. This area will be R40, Jordan Lake Watershed Conservation District. Our minimum lot size will be 100 feet by 150 feet. And in this area, this additional 18 acres, we will probably be able to accommodate another 20 or 22 lots. Phase 1, let's say, of Autumnwood is 45 lots. And primary access is to Green Level Road. We have not crossed the threshold of needing to public access out of this subdivision. And during the review process, we've had conversations with emergency services for this subdivision, and they have reviewed, and their opinion is that the current condition is a gravel road. That Ridgeback Road is adequate as a secondary access. The primary access will be from Green Level West Road. And I'm not certain what else I can say, but if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Open for discussion.
Okay, so just as a point of disclosure, there are times when I go by the name of concerned neighbor. Yeah, so if you're looking at the map on the right here, where the little blue arrow is, that's actually where I live. That's my lot. I live on Ridgeback. And the road that in question is a long, single-wide dirt road that the neighbors, it's private, the neighbors, about twice a year, we get out there and we buy gravel and we put it down. So that's why there's been a lot of possessiveness over, how this is going to happen, because we actually have a signed road maintenance agreement recorded with the county that says that we're going to maintain that road. And now the other thing of interest is that over where you see that little loop on White Oak across the street is the new elementary school. So to think that people who live in these subdivisions are not going to go up White Oak straight to the school, you're kind of kidding yourself. And there's also the trailhead for the American Tobacco Trail. So this was not a part of the zoning. I've had discussions with Joel, my neighbor, and with the company that's doing the development, and we're having talks on the side about the road maintenance agreement. So that's just to kind of fill you in on where that is,
okay.
Because that road would not stand up to construction traffic at all. But we have proven that you can get a fire truck down it multiple times. Yeah. Some other comments to make about this. Actually, I don't know how familiar you are with the Southwest Area Plan. Years ago, when it was first developed, there was the usual angst that we all had about Cary coming in. There was a huge amount of participation by everyone in this area to develop the Southwest Area Plan and all of the rules that you see here. There's been some tweaking over the years, but the spirit still remains. And everyone I have talked to, which is a lot of people, seem pleased that everyone who's coming in to develop is staying with the rules. We're not having, nobody's asking for any exceptions. This is what we all agreed on. It wasn't perfect for anyone, but it was an agreement, and and he's correct. We are excited about having some pavement on that road. It's just that one little stretch between them and White Oak that we have to work out, and I feel fairly comfortable that we're going to be able to do that.
Is anyone else?
I was wondering, Deborah, it would be just helpful, could you go back to the slide that showed, I guess, phase one of that development that's going to be on Green Level West Road, so I just get myself oriented. I forget what slide number that was.
Number 46.
Thank you.
And
so as I look at that, okay, so there was a slide before, maybe the one before that had the yellow highlight, just show where that was in relationship to, thank you. That's it, perfect. Okay. So then, if I understand, then really this is, as was described, this yellow area on the slide is really phase two of the existing so phase one is being planned.
it's in review right now.
Right down there.
It's been submitted, this area highlighted in green.
Oh, okay. I didn't see. Okay. But the main entrance will be, okay, right there. All right. Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's helpful. Thanks.
Yes.
Yes, I have a question. I still have some confusion about this improvement. So the applicant's proposing, or actually required to improve the road frontage of their property, correct? So we have this little portion of a private road which is now going to be paved. Whose responsibility is it to
That's a private, separate agreement. The first I heard of it was tonight, but that's going to be a private agreement. That's not going to be maintained by the town. So
Okay, and that's kind of where I was going with this. So the town would have no responsibilities for
correct.
snow removal
We don't have
or
any
anything?
public right-of-way in there.
Okay.
Right,
Okay, I just want to confirm that.
correct.
And that's not a condition or anything
No.
like that. That is,
No, and it's iffy. I mean, we have very little control over that, but we're doing what we can. That road actually is so narrow that if two cars try to pass, one has to pull over into someone's yard.
I tried to get through with the mail truck.
Was that you
today.
I ran off? Oh, yeah, that mail
That
truck.
was the mail truck.
You gotta look out.
So I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
anyone else? If not,
I'd like to make a motion. I move that the board forward case number 15 REZ 17 to Town Council with a recommendation for approval, as it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans and is reasonable and in the public interest for the reasons set forth in the staff report and presentation.
Second.
discussion, please.
Excuse me, I didn't get
Wayne.
The second is Wayne.
When the school went in, development was inevitable, and like I say, I'm really happy to see that it is happening in the manner that everyone agreed was the way to do it out there. So, I think what they've come up with is good, and they've kept everyone in the loop, and the issue with the road is something that we would eventually have to work out. It's nice that it's kind of starting up close to White Oak so that the stretch of road in question is very small at this point.
Well, here, having heard Carla's comments, it does seem as if this is going to be acceptable to the neighborhood. We don't have a whole lot of people sitting out there in the audience biting their fingernails over this decision we're going to make. It's in line with the master plan. I was sort of amazed at all the development that's going on out on Green Level Road, the construction, et cetera. And I do want to sort of ask one question, and is just going to answer my own curiosity here. There was some comment about a traffic circle near the school. Is that?
Yes.
Is that actually?
Now, bear in mind, we are in the middle of nowhere.
That's why I'm asking the question.
And we are going to have our very own traffic circle.
Folks in Hillsborough had a hard time with traffic circles. I don't know what some of these country folks are going to do out there, but anyway, is that part of the plan? Or,
well, usually we don't use traffic circles to do the wheelies out there, and now we'll actually have a
Sorry for my lack of decorum here, but this seems pretty reasonable, and the fact that the neighbors have got the buy-in that I'm with this.
Now that our discussion circle is over, anything else? If not, all those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. You survived. I believe we have one more left.
This next item is a request to rezone about 16 acres at 1312 Bachelor Road. This is a vicinity map. You can see Bachelor Road coming down to the south that meets with Green Level Road. The existing zoning on the site is R40 watershed in Wake County. The proposed zoning is R40 conditional use. Also, it's would be in the Conservation Residential Overlay District and the Watershed Protection Overlay District. Proposed zoning conditions would limit land use to detached dwellings, neighborhood recreation, or public or private parks. The land use plan designation for this area is very low density conservation residential. This allows development as a conventional subdivision with a minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet, or a conservation subdivision, which allows smaller lot sizes depending on the amount of, excuse me, the amount of regulatory open space that is on the site, with a maximum density of 1.5 units per acre. Based on the expectations for the regulatory open space, it would likely be a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet for the individual lots. There is a small amount of stream buffer shown on the property according to Cary's GIS maps. You can see that in this upper corner in the blue. Bachelor Road is shown on the comprehensive transportation plan as Collector Road, and then you can also see Green Level Church Road. I'm sorry. Green Level West Road as a major thoroughfare. And then there are other potential future thoroughfares in the area as well, coming down from White Oak Church Road. There were no speakers at the public hearing, and there were no comments from council members. That concludes staff's presentation. Will be available for any questions.
And there is no applicant to speak to?
The applicant's here, yes.
My apologies.
Hello again. I'm Brandon Moore at the site group at 1111 Oberlin Road. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Franklin to voice support for the rezoning that he's proposed on his property out in West Cary. As Mary has stated, this is consistent with the land use plan. Is consistent, in our opinion, it's consistent with other developments that have occurred in the area, most notably directly to the north. The Purse property has came through and is under development right now. The question we get most often in meetings or from staff was the chunk that is missing from the parcel, which is where Mr. Franklin lives. He plans on remaining there, and he wants to stay in the county for the time being. I assume that eventually that would be redeveloped as a lot that's consistent with the rest of the parcels whenever he needs to have sewer service or when water comes to the area. Right now, the sewer is planned on going in to the Purse property, and there's another development it's shown as R8CU up to the north. They'll put a pump station in there at some point. And I think it's with their current site plan, and we'll gravity sewer to that. But development won't occur until that's available. I'm here to answer questions. We think this is a logical progression for this site, and we'll appreciate your support for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the applicant or for staff? Would anyone care to make a motion then?
I have a motion. I move that the board forward case number 15, REZ 21, to Town Council with a recommendation for approval, as it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans, and is reasonable and in the public interest for the reasons set forth in the staff report and presentation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion, please.
So this one was an easy one for me. I think this makes sense. As the applicant said, I think it bodes well with the neighboring areas. It matches up pretty good, and I'm in support of it.
Agree. I mean, glad to see that the proposed zoning districts are keeping in line with that, with the plan for that area. So
Any other discussion on this motion?
Carla's going to have some more neighbors. And they're not too far from the roundabout.
I have a lot of neighbors coming in.
All the more reason to put it in there.
There you go.
All right, if that's it for our discussion, then all those in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously once again. And I believe we've reached the end of our agenda for cases, so with no new or old business.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Good night. Happy holidays to everyone. We'll see you in
Merry Christmas.
2016.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.